All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Invertebrate Investigations with Butterfly Pavilion. My name is Kayla, and I'm your educator today, and we are going to be talking about decomposers. Just a few housekeeping things. If you are watching, you cannot speak or turn your camera on, but you can use the Q&A to communicate with me. If you're on a tablet or a phone, you may need to just tap that screen. So it'll bring up a menu on the bottom, and there should be an option for Q&A. If you're on a laptop or desktop computer, you may need to bring your mouse over and kind of hover it over so that you can see that menu pop up. But I will be keeping an eye on the chat if any questions come in. Feel free to pop them in there at any time, though I do only have one screen, so bear with me if I don't answer your question right away. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Today we are talking about decomposers. So these animals have a bit of a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. So if you're not familiar with Butterfly Pavilion, we are located in Westminster, Colorado, just north of Denver, and we are an invertebrate zoo. So invertebrates are animals with no bones. No bones at all. And invertebrates actually make up about 97% of all animal life on Earth, which is really impressive. That's a lot of animals. They can be found at the tops of mountains. They can be found at the bottom of the ocean. They can be found right in your own backyard. And they really do a lot of important jobs in our ecosystems. And they're also just really cool, really cool. So we're going to be focusing in on those that provide decomposition services for us today. So ecosystem services, if you haven't heard of it, this is any sort of positive benefit that an animal or a plant or something in the ecosystem can provide for humans. And so that can be lots of different things. It can be resources. So things like wood from trees, that counts. Water from streams. Pollination. Pollination's a big one. Pollinators get a lot of attention, and as they should. But there are also a lot of other services like carbon storage and decomposition. So an ecosystem service, anything that helps humans out, and that can be any kind of things. Also, we're looking at like cultural things too. So monarch butterflies, for example, have a lot of cultural impacts, a lot of cultural importance. And so we don't want to forget that when we're thinking about ecosystem services. Now, our decomposers, they usually have a lot of cultural impact, but a lot of negative cultural impact. So I'm hoping today we'll kind of explore their world and maybe they'll seem a little less gross or creepy. Also, before we get started, just a little bit on language. So a decomposer versus a detritivore. So technically, the animals that we're going to be looking at today are detritivores, not decomposers. The only difference is how the nutrients are taken in by the organism. So a mushroom, for example, fungi are decomposers. They are directly applying enzymes to whatever they're working on and just sort of directly absorb it into their body. Versus a detritivore is going to be something that eats detritus or eats decomposing things, decaying things. So just like a carnivore is an animal that eats meat, an herbivore is an animal that eats plants, omnivore is an animal that eats both. Detritivores are going to be your animals that are going to be eating maybe some things that not a lot of other animals want to eat. And so you can kind of think of them as nature's garbage collectors. So just like with our human sanitation workers, if we did not have them, our world would be kind of a gross place, right? If we didn't have someone to come and pick up our trash and take it to the landfill, make sure it ends up in the right spot, our lives would look very, very different. Same thing with our detritivores and our decomposers. They are the ones who are living on the forest floor, taking care of rotting food, things like fruits, veggies, leaves, things like that. Also, rotting animals, right? Things die in the forest and you need your decomposers and your detritivores to come and help clean that up. Also, especially when we talk about our first animals, sometimes they're taking care of animal waste, right? Dirty job. Someone's got to do it. So we're going to go through a couple different categories of detritivores, some of my favorite ones, talk about what they do for our ecosystem. And then at the very end, I do have some very cute detritivores sitting next to me. We're going to take a look at them. So our very first animal is going to be maybe not the most glamorous animal, but they do provide a very important service, and that is the dung beetle. So if you are picturing a dung beetle, you probably are thinking about what you see on the screen right now. A beetle that rolls a little ball of dung and pushes it around with its back legs. But there are actually all kinds of dung beetles, and they can be found all over the world. So the really famous ones, of course, are the ones that make little balls and roll them around to, put them in their spot. But you also have ones that will kind of just burrow or tunnel. So they'll find a dung pile, probably from a large herbivore like an elephant or a bison, and they'll just burrow right in, make that their home. Also, sometimes you'll see them burrow up underneath the dung pile. And the reason that they are, using this as their food source is especially herbivore droppings, herbivore waste has a lot of plant material still in it that the animal could not digest. And so there's still a lot of nutrition in that dung. So it seems kind of gross to us, but someone's got to take care of it. And so in places like, you think about like the African savannas, so with elephants and giraffes and other large herbivores, these dung beetles are cleaning up the ecosystem. They're helping recycle those nutrients back into the soil. And they're also using it usually to provide a safe place for their offspring and provide a safe food source for themselves and their young. Dung beetles, though, can be found in the United States as well. In fact, we have some really pretty ones. Given their role in the ecosystem, they're surprisingly attractive. And those are rainbow scarab beetles. So these are found pretty much all over the United States, though they're not as common as we would like them to be. But these are especially in prairie ecosystems like you see in the Midwest and here in Colorado, very important for keeping our prairie ecosystems healthy. So an organization that we partner with, Denver Zoo, over the summer, they did a lot of raising of these rainbow scarab beetles and then releasing them into the ecosystem. So as we are working on rewilding our prairies, right, making sure that bison and deer and other things that we would traditionally see, as we're bringing those back, we also need to bring back these dung beetles because they were taking care of all the bison droppings. So as we're working on reintroducing and bringing up the numbers of bison in the United States, we also need to make sure that our scarab beetles are coming along for the ride so that they can help break all that stuff down and make sure that our ecosystems are super healthy. So with our rainbow scarab beetles right here over on the left, I've got a male. So the males do have these funky little horns. Over on the right, we have a male and a female. They're about the same size, but the females do lack the horns. So maybe if you're really lucky, you can go find some. You do usually have to go find a cow patty or a bison patty. So be careful, make sure you wash your hands after scavenging, but you may be able to find some really awesome rainbow scarab beetles. All right, up next, depending on how you feel about creepy crawlies, we'll see how you feel about this particular animal, and that is the millipede. The millipede. So millipedes are not insects. They have way too many legs. They are something called a myriapod, and that is going to include millipedes and centipedes. Now, the difference between the two, so they have lots of legs, they have long, skinny bodies. They may scare you if you find one in your basement. But they are really important. So just real quick, the difference between a millipede and a centipede. So millipedes are detritivores. They will only eat decaying plants, maybe decaying animals. Whereas your centipedes are going to be carnivores. They are hunters. They will chase down their prey. And because they're carnivores, they are also venomous. And they sometimes can deliver a very painful bite. Also, they are then usually fairly brightly colored. So this one I have on the picture has some very bright orange legs and a bright orange head. That is some warning coloration to warn off anything that wants to mess with them. Stay away from me. I am venomous, and I will say centipedes are pretty quick to bite. So if we do find one, let's make sure we give it some space. We don't have any deadly centipedes in the United States, but that's still going to be a pretty painful bite. So if we find one, best to just let it be. Our millipedes, on the other hand, they're not biters. They do not have venom. However, they are poisonous. So some do have the ability to secrete toxins through their skin. It would taste really bad. It would make you sick. So if you were a predator and you're looking to this millipede for a nice snack, you get it in your mouth, you get that really gross. They're probably going to be really bitter. Sometimes even their toxins are similar to cyanide. So it can be can be quite dangerous if you stick them in your mouth. But as long as you're not trying to eat them and you wash your hands after handling them, millipedes are quite safe. Here in the United States, especially in Colorado, we don't have any huge millipede species. In my photo here, I believe this is a giant African millipede. And they can get fairly large. They can get up to about a foot long. Really, really beautiful creatures. They kind of just look like a stretched out roly-poly. But especially in drier climates like in Colorado, our millipedes are going to be pretty small. And you're only going to find them maybe looking out under rocks or logs. If you happen to be in the southeast or the Midwest, where it's a little more humid, a little more damp, you potentially will see some larger millipede species. And then I do have a quick video I wanted to show you just so we can see those amazing legs in action. If my computer will cooperate. Oh, too far. There we go. So millipedes, despite their name, do not usually have 1,000 legs. Most of them are going to have 100 to 300 legs. But you can see in this video when they're kind of moving as a wave, and each body segment, play this again, each body segment has 2 legs. So you can kind of see they're almost like little pairs of legs all the way down. They do have antennae. They're going to rely on those antennae to help them sniff out maybe some decaying fruit or some decaying plants, so they can find their meals. And they're going to spend most of their time hanging out under logs or rocks in the soil, not going to come up very often, tend to be pretty shy. But they are fun, and these are ones that if you do find one out in your yard, feel free to very gently handle it. Just make sure you put it back where you found it and wash your hands after. You should be washing hands after handling animals, no matter what, but especially these guys in case you do get some of those toxins on your skin. All right, up next, cockroaches. No one's favorite bug, right? But even if you are not a huge fan of cockroaches, you have to respect their adaptability, because these are some of the most adaptable creatures on the planet. And they particularly are really good at adapting to live around humans, which is what makes them a little bit of a pest. So I have lived in places that had cockroach infestations. Not a fun time. But I have since then, I'm no longer living where I can randomly find one in my kitchen in the middle of the night. I've kind of learned to appreciate them. So some common ones that you may see here in the United States, we have brown-banded and German cockroaches. They are fairly small, very prolific breeders, very, very good at living in human spaces. And then if you've got some really big ones, you have your Orientals and your American cockroaches. So these are probably going to be maybe an inch and a half long. They can get pretty big. Some of them can fly. So they can be a little intimidating. But the reason we see them so often in our spaces is because they're taking advantage of all of the garbage and things that we leave behind. So they have adapted to live off of all kinds of food sources, and especially like in dumpsters and whatnot. That's basically a buffet for them, right? All kinds of rotting food, really interesting things. Maybe they're showing up in your kitchen, snacking on the crumbs on the floor. So one way to kind of avoid having cockroaches in your home is to clean. So especially if I have any kiddos watching, when your adults ask you to clean up your crumbs after having a snack, there is a reason for that, because we want to let the cockroaches enjoy living outside instead of coming into our homes. But cockroaches are so much more than, let's say, the German roaches or the American roaches that you may find out in your dumpster. They actually can be quite beautiful animals. So here are just a few of my favorite species of roaches. We have three of the 5 featured here at Butterfly Pavilion. So just up at the top, we have chrome roaches, which have these really interesting kind of silver gray shells and little spots on their heads. They're fairly small, and they mainly eat decaying fruit. Madagascar hissing cockroaches are very, very popular as like classroom pets, and we use them as ambassador animals as well. They are only found in Madagascar, and they are not considered pests where they're from. They pretty much hang out in the rainforests away from people. They do hiss if you touch them sometimes. It is a defense mechanism, just like with a snake or a cat. That hissing sound means that they want you to go away. They want you to think that they are something scarier than they are. then coming down, we have our domino roaches, which have these cute little spots, just like Dalmatians. They're pretty common as pets because they're so eye-catching. Same with the emerald roaches. They have that gorgeous emerald green color. They're fairly small. And are pretty popular in the hobby as keeping as pets. And then one of the largest roaches in the world is the South American cave cockroach, and we do have these in our collection as well. They are pretty large, about 2 inches, maybe even bigger. So a very large roach, but they do prefer to stay in quiet, dark places. They're not really going to be invading someone's home. So again, cockroaches maybe aren't your favorite bug. That's okay. I understand, but you've got to respect them. All right, finally, we have our isopods. So there are lots and lots of common names for isopods: roly-polies, pill bugs, sow bugs, doodle bugs. Depending on where you live in the country, you may have a different name. I grew up in North Carolina. We called them roly-polies. But isopod is also, kind of a good catch-all name for them. And they are not actually insects. So despite the fact that they look like little bugs, they are actually crustaceans. They are land crustaceans. So just like crabs and shrimp and lobsters, these little isopods are crustaceans. So it's that they have too many legs to be an insect. They usually have about 12 or 14 legs, depending on the species. And they don't really have the body segmentation that you would see on an insect. Isopods are pretty common throughout the country. Usually you're going to see little gray ones if you go out in your yard and lift up a stone or a log. You may see some little gray roly-polies wandering around in there, but they actually are found all over the world and can be quite colorful. So here are just a few of the fancy species I was able to find. These are not currently in Butterfly Pavilion's collection. So up in the top right, we have our rubber ducky isopods. They are having a bit of a moment at the time in the hobby. Very, very cute. They come from Southeast Asia. Also spiky isopods. So they have these little spines on their backs. Really, really interesting. We've got a zebra isopod right here with their pretty stripes. And then there are also deep sea isopods. So these get very, very large. They live at the bottom of the ocean. And they do live fully aquatic. So unlike their cousins who have adapted to live on land, your deep sea isopods are fully aquatic and can get very, very large. Now I have some very, very cute isopods with me right now. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. So these are gastroid isopods. So they're going to be a little fancier than your standard species, and they have some really, really great coloration. So let's go ahead and get the camera on them. Now, if you look in here, you're probably like, Kayla, where are the isopods? Oh, there's one. There's one. There's one hanging out, but I'm going to flip this log over and see if we can see some. So I didn't want to disturb them too much, but we will lift this up and see who wants to say hello. So look at all those isopods right there. So these particular species are known for this gorgeous yellow coloration. Sometimes they're called yellow spotted isopods as well. They are going to be native to Europe, actually. And just like the isopods we have here in the United States, they're going to prefer damp, dark, quiet places, which is why they're all hanging out under this log right here. And they are some great, great decomposers. They love to munch on decaying leaves, leaf litter, fruit. We do have, looks like maybe some apple and some carrot for our isopods in here as well. And these are very, very popular as pets too. I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole looking at fancy isopod breeds. And they come in pretty much kind of any color you can imagine. Now, if you are looking to maybe start keeping some isopods as pets, I would recommend starting with dairy cow isopods. They are going to be kind of same body shape, same size, but they are white with like little black and gray spots, so just like a cow. They are really easy to care for. They don't really have super high humidity needs. And they are fairly prolific breeders as well. They're not too difficult to breed. So if you're looking at starting an isopod colony, I would recommend starting with dairy cows. But if you want to get super fancy with it, there are lots and lots of options. This particular species as well, the gastroid isopods, they are also pretty easy to care for. They don't have super high humidity needs. So especially if you're in a dry place like Colorado, making sure you keep them damp enough so that they can survive. Fun fact about isopods of all kinds is they have adapted to live on land and to breathe air, but they always carry a little drop of water up under their shell with them so that their gills stay damp. So unlike insects, which are going to breathe through holes in their sides, these guys do have gills and they have to keep those gills damp. So again, that's why they're going to stay in the leaf litter. They're going to stay in dark places where they can stay nice and moist. And they're not going to want to come out and, hang out in the sunshine too much. We'll see if my camera will focus. I've got a little baby one right here. Let's see if I can see it. It's tiny, super tiny. Oh, I just lost it. Right there. That little orange thing, that's a little baby isopod. They have kind of an interesting life cycle. They don't undergo metamorphosis or anything. When they hatch, they pretty much look like their adult versions, except sometimes they're white or translucent. So this species won't get their colors until they're a little bit older. It looks like maybe I've got a couple more hanging out right here on the wood. Let's see if we can see them. There they are, little baby isopods, teeny tiny. These guys are being pretty good sports. It is kind of bright in this room. So they're being very tolerant as I lift them up and expose them to the light. They're not too upset with me. So I always say thank you to my animals for being good sports. We're just going to gently set this back down in here and make sure I'm not squishing anyone. Let them hang out. You can watch them while they crawl around. Oops, sorry guys. So we do keep our isopods. We try and mimic their wild setup as much as possible. So in here you can see, we obviously keep logs in here for them so they have a place to hide. They've got lots of leaf litter. And then we do supplement their diet as well. We've got some apple slices in here. We've got some carrots in here. And they're getting calcium supplements as well, just to make sure that they're getting all the nutrients and minerals that they need. But a good isopod setup, if you're looking at keeping them as pets, is the place where they can all hide. So it is one of the things about keeping them is if you've got a really, really good setup for them, you're probably not going to see them very much. They're going to be down in the leaf litter, down in the soil where they can do their jobs. They're going to help eat these decaying leaves and kind of break everything down and return those nutrients to the soil. They can be really, really fun to watch. I don't keep isopods as pets myself, but they're probably number one on my list if I were going to keep invertebrates would be keeping an isopod tank. They also can be housed with other animals, and they're very frequently used as kind of cleanup crew in maybe a mixed tank. So if you have other animals, a lot of times people will put isopods in to help clean up any decaying matter. It can be really fun to keep them in tanks with beetles. We do sometimes keep them with our hissing cockroaches as well. So they can live with other animals. You also can have mixed tanks of different types of isopods. So just to recap, so our decomposers or our detritivores, they are going to be animals that are eating decaying material. So whether that's decaying plants or decaying animals, they are going to take care of that, sometimes even animal waste. And without our decomposers and our detritivores, our world would look very, very different. A lot of that stuff would kind of build up, and especially maybe in drier places like California or Colorado, it's going to potentially increase your risks for wildfire, right? So without all these, these dry leaves piling up, if they're not being decomposed and broken down by your isopods and your cockroaches and your millipedes, you can have a lot of leaf litter build up, and that can make forest fires worse. They're also just keeping our spaces cleaner, helping with disease control, right? So especially with things like dead animals, your scavengers, your decomposers, your detritivores, they're helping break down those carcasses. And so while we're also returning nutrients back into the food web, we're also helping take care of any potential diseases that may come from those decaying animals. So they may not be the most glamorous animals on the planet, but they do have a very important job. So next time you see a roly-poly or a millipede or maybe even a cockroach, you just say a little thank you for all the services that they provide for us. All right. So thank you all so much for joining me today. Hope you learned a little bit and got to see some really cute isopods. So next month, our invertebrate investigation is going to be all about spiders. So that's going to be on October 21st at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. You can register for free through our website. It's butterflies.org. And I'm really, really excited about the October program because I love spiders. Spiders are my favorite animals. So if you want to learn a little bit more about spiders, maybe why they're not so scary after all. And I also should have a very, very sweet tarantula guest with me. So we'll see. Hopefully she'll be cooperative. May not get to hold her, but we'll at least have her on camera. So if you want to join me for that, sign up on our website. Also, as always, if you are a teacher, preschool program manager, anything like that, and you want Butterfly Pavilion to do a kind of a dedicated virtual program for you, you can request that through our website. We have all different types of topics. We can show animals on camera and things like that. So if you're interested, again, check out our website, look for the virtual learning page, and you can learn more about that. So I am going to go ahead and log off. We'll have one last look at our isopods before I put them away, let them go back into a dark room. So thank you all so much for joining today. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in October.